Started here today, so we're going to talk about Lab 7 briefly. I did get that posted on D2L. You should be able to see that now. It's due Sunday at midnight. As per usual, if you run into any issues, let me know. If you let me know before Saturday-ish, I can probably extend that basically as long as you want me to. As long as I see you're making progress in the lab, I'm more than willing to extend it if you run into issues. But we did go through pretty much everything you have to do for Lab 7 on Monday, so I think it should be pretty straightforward, but we'll see, I guess. So again, just like we were talking about, just setting all of this up, Ubuntu 1, Ubuntu 2, 3, 4, all in the IA lab. Bunch of screenshots to do, and the additional information is a bit important. So again, I might log in. If I do so, I'll log into the Ubuntu box and navigate to Ubuntu 1. That does require that you go into the WordPress settings and change the URL to 21 instead of 22. Otherwise, it will constantly redirect me to the Ubuntu 2 server instead of the Ubuntu 1 server when I actually go to do things. And all of that. The bonus opportunity for this one is 5 points, so configuring NFS to share the WordPress content. And we're going to talk about how to set all that stuff up today. So if you want to spend a little bit more time and get a few bonus points, there's the opportunity to do so with the NFS stuff. So any questions on Lab 7 right now? All right. So remember, one of the issues we ran into was when we were balancing our requests between Ubuntu 2 and Ubuntu 3, data would be uploaded to one of those. Let's say an image. It would be stored in the WP content folder on one of the boxes, but let's say a request is routed to a different box. It wouldn't find it in its WP content store, and it would just error out. So one of the things we can do is we can basically have that data stored somewhere else and served in a slightly different way. And the way that we're going to do that is by using NFS. So NFS is very similar to a share kind of on Windows, Samba, if you've heard of those type of things, but it's specifically for Unix environments, types of things like that. There's basic NFS support, I think, in OS X and Windows, but it's nowhere near as good as Samba. And actually, there's quite a bit of functionality that goes into NFS. There's a lot of authentication stuff that I don't think we're really going to get into. By default, NFS is kind of unauthenticated. You can just connect as anybody. The one thing that people usually do would be to limit which IP addresses can connect, which host names can connect, and a couple permission type things. So one thing that's kind of interesting about NFS is it shares the user permissions and group permissions from the server to the clients. So one thing that you might have to do in a different environment is keep the server and the client usernames and groups the same. If they end up differing, the permissions don't pass through. And there's a couple configuration options we can look at that basically disable permissions. But in this case, since the Ubuntu boxes all have the same users and everything, we're basically going to be mounting as www data for all of them, and they all have the same user IDs and everything. I don't think we're really going to look much at permissions. I think everything should be relatively straightforward when we're doing this setup. So just to look at this really briefly, we have two packages. We have the NFS kernel server, which actually serves the data, which establishes the shares and everything, and we have NFS common. So if you're a client in an NFS environment, we use the NFS common package, which comes with the NFS utilities to actually mount file systems, and otherwise we use the server package to serve all of these things. And we're also going to look at a couple other things getting into file management. Probably should have talked about mounting disks and things like that before, but we'll probably put that off until another day. So let's go through this. Let's install NFS kernel server on our Ubuntu 1 box. So ultimately what we want to do, close that out, is we want, where are we at here? Let me find my image here. We want Ubuntu 1 to host the files, and Ubuntu 2 and Ubuntu 3 will basically just upload their files to Ubuntu 1. And then what we're going to do is inside of our Nginx config here is we're just going to serve the files from the local file system. So when we have a file that's uploaded to WordPress, it will be under the wp-content path. And what we can do is go into our Nginx load balancer and just say for that path, we're just going to serve from our local file system. And on that local file system is going to be our NFS share. So that's what we're going to do. But before we do any of that, let's just go through and do a little basic NFS setup to kind of figure out what's going on. So Ubuntu 1 apt install NFS kernel server. A few packages there. I'm going to go over to Ubuntu 2 and kick off the client really quick. It's NFS common. I'm hitting the captive portal right now, so I'm going to go log into that. So just going to wait on that for a second here. Alright, so that's all set up. So, status NFS kernel server. I think it got started by default. Yeah, so it's active, and that's all good to go. So, in order to configure which folders are shared, we look in the etc directory at the exports file. So it will be etc exports. And this is where we define what we want shared, who we want it shared to, and any permissions that we want. So before I do that, I'm just going to go over to temp. I'm going to make just a share directory. So just for demonstration purposes. And then I'll go back to exports. And then I will say our syntax is like this. So the folder that we want to share, who we want to share it to, so that's a host name or IP address or IP range, and then any permissions. So we can have like read-only and sync. So read-only would say clients can only read from the drive, and sync would basically kind of work to write things out faster to the drive when we're writing to it. One of the things in a networked distributed file system that you have to think about is, do you want every single individual change being written out to the share as fast as possible? In some environments you might want to kind of queue up changes so they don't all happen at once. So maybe if you have something like a backup environment, something where things aren't very time sensitive, you do that. But in this environment we want to push data out as fast as we possibly can, because it's going to be served relatively quickly, and we're only going to be writing data. We're not really going to be reading data in this environment, at least. But there's a whole bunch of different options that we could think about. So I think what I'm going to do, or at least for right now, let's just do this. So we're going to mount temp share. We're going to allow it to all hosts. We're going to say Now let's do read-write sync, and I think we'll call that good. So one thing to note is the NFS configuration files are very, very strict on what they allow. So you must have your hostname directly up against this parenthesis. You must have no spaces in between your options, and it's generally annoying, and that catches you off guard. Let's say, for instance, you do this and you have a space there. It will error out. It won't do anything, and you'll have to check the log to see what's wrong. So there's that. I will go ahead and restart ctl restart the kernel server. Let's just do status really quick to check and make sure everything worked. Yeah, it looks like everything's running correctly. So what we can do is go over to Ubuntu 2. In order to mount things, you do have to be root. So I will do that, or at least there's ways to get around that, but basically you have to be root. So I'll go over to my temp directory. In order to mount something somewhere, you need a folder that's empty, so an empty folder to mount it in, mount it on, in, whichever one you want to say, share. So I'll make directory share. And then we use the mount command to mount our NFS share onto this folder. So the basic syntax of the mount command is device and mount point. So in this case, what I'll do is I'll just use the IP address just in case DNS is broken. So 21. And then I say I want to mount share on share. Access denied by server. That doesn't seem right. So the one thing that I might have done is I might have to say temp share instead of just share. Okay, there we go. So you get that kind of an error if you were actually denied or if you just didn't have the right path. So now I can go into the share directory, and it's again it's served by Ubuntu 1. It's just used by Ubuntu 2 right here. Let's say I wanted to touch ASDF. And of course there's some permissions there that I didn't account for. I think I did. Let me go back here and check and make sure I did do read write. Okay, I did do read write. That's odd that I can't do anything here. I'll touch it over here, so we have ASDF sitting in that share directory. If I go back over here, we can see we do have that ASDF file created. I think I might be able to edit this file. No, I can't even. That's interesting. I can't even change file permissions, so it should definitely allow me to do that if I had the read write on. That's annoying. Root ASDF. I can't. Maybe I'll just look it up. That's fine. Write NFS. See, like here it says read write. The client machine will have read and write access to the directory. And that makes sense. And that's what I did. I don't actually know about that. That's weird. It didn't happen before, as usual. Operation not permitted. It might be to do with the temp permissions too. Temp permissions are a little bit different. But see, it should definitely allow me to do that because my user ID is the same on both machines. They're both 0. Like, I got 0 over here as root, and 0 over here as root. Allowed read write. Okay, interesting. So it looks like it's not liking that I'm root. So in order to change that, I could do no root squash to get away with writing as root. If I would have done this demo directly as data, I don't think I would have had to do that. But it's just not liking that I did root, which is annoying. So I'll restart that. Now we can get back to everything, I think. I think it died because I restarted the server, so I'm just going to use the umount command to unmount the share. And then I'll mount it again. Touch ASDF2. Here's a different way I'll try it. I'll try and chown DSU. If it is a problem with the root permissions, that will fix it, and then I'll drop to DSU, cd temp share, touch ASDF2, and then I'll do the same over here and try and use the DSU user instead to write to the share. That's really weird. I don't know why that's happening still. So now it's not saying I can't write, but it's just stalling out there, not actually writing, which is fun. Okay, so I guess eventually it finally actually worked. Okay, maybe there's just some lag there or something happened with the network, but now it's finally writing out. So I don't know what was happening there specifically, but it seems to work fine now, so that's cool. So I think as long as you don't end up using root by default, what I was trying to show there, just saying read, write, sync, should work fine, and so on and so forth. So the other way, so when we're using the mount command, basically that's not persistent. It won't keep the mount forever. If we reboot the box, it will stop the mount basically. So what I'm going to do is show you how to make a persistent mount point. So we'll say umount share. I'm not root. I got to do that. Sudo I share. And then what we're going to do is go look over at the etcfs tab file. So what this file shows you is all of your mount points on your system. So you can see here the different components of this file. So we have the device we want to mount, where we want to mount it, the type of the device that we're mounting, any options that we're passing into the mount, and then a couple other options that are really relevant. So in order to do a NFS mount point, all we would have to do is say the server, so 192.168.121, the thing we want to mount, so we'll say temp share. We'll say the mount point is local temp share. Type is NFS. For options, we're just going to say default, and we're going to say 0 and 0 to those dump and pass options. So normally, if we just rebooted the box, that mount would take effect. Otherwise, if we don't want to reboot the box, we can just say mount-A, and that will, incorrect mount option is specified, of course. If we said mount A, it will just parse out the FS tab file, and it would automatically do that mount. I think I just left off the S on that defaults, and there we go. So if I just type the mount command without any other options, it will actually tell me all of my mounts. So you can see right here at the very bottom, we can see this is what was actually mounted. If I went to reboot the box, again, what will happen is you will see it will still be active. And this is generally the option setup that you want to take when we were doing the WordPress one, is we want to put it in FS tab because we want it to be persistent throughout all of our reboots and everything like that. Again, let's just go back to DSU, go into share, touch ASDF5. We can see we got ASDF5 right there. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers all of the NFS stuff. So let's go ahead and actually set this up for our WordPress environment. So what I'm going to do is go back over to Ubuntu 1, and what I'll do is I will make a directory for our data. So I'll say mkdir var WP content. That's content. That seems nice. And since www data needs to be reading and writing to that, we'll just change ownership. So they can write to it as needed. And then we will go into etsy exports, and we'll take this option off since we should be only writing as users from now on. And then we'll say var WP content. Curious if it's not liking my dash in there. I think it might not be liking that. Let's restart it and see if it works. Yeah, it doesn't care. It works fine. So just to test this out really quick before I move on. It should be fine. Let's just not even be worried about it right now. So let's go over to our WordPress directory, var WordPress. And we see that WordPress content right now. You can see we got a whole lot of stuff in there. So we have really just a lot of content. Let me scroll up here. Let me see if there's actually any data. Because that might be the other thing is, okay, so we have actually a little bit different path than I was expecting. So we only want to serve things in this uploads directory. So that's our image that we'd uploaded before, and that's all we actually want to serve is just this uploads directory. Everything else is actual PHP code themes and things like that. And this is the actual content that would be uploaded by the user. So what I'm going to do is go into uploads, or WP content uploads. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear out that folder. Remember, in order to mount something, it has to be clear. There can't be anything in there. I don't have the permissions. And then what I'll do is I will mount. I'll use the mount command right now. So I'll say mount 192.168.121 var WP content, and I'll mount that right on uploads. So now if I ls on this, you should see uploads is www data. And that looks like it's working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to, I'm going to go over to the other Ubuntu box really quick and set that up. I think we're probably going to run into a few path issues on Nginx later on, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We're on SSH 3. Go over, do the exact same thing. I don't think we have any content on this box, though. Oh, no, we do. Okay. So clear that out again. Uploads, star, and then we'll mount. I didn't install NFS common on here to actually do that yet, so I need to do that. Wait for a second for that to finish. Okay, it's because I was root again, that's fine. So we'll go ahead and mount 192.121 var WP content on uploads. And we got that running. So let's actually go over to WordPress then. Everything should still be configured from before. If we navigate to this again, we should see that that image is not there anymore, and the whole post is actually gone. I might have deleted that. So let's just go. We're going to do this again, and then we'll see where that image actually ends up in our NFS share. You can see those are broken right now since we did delete those. So I will just upload a new one. Hopefully that will work. Right now it's broken because we haven't actually configured Nginx yet to serve that URL, but I think it will actually be inside the directory when we look at it. So we go and we look at, where are we at here? We're going to look in our directory there. And we can see we had that 2017 directory created. Codes. And there's our test.jpg there. And actually, as everything's configured right now, it should work perfectly fine because the data is being synced between the two Ubuntu servers, and it will actually serve the data from either one of those servers. But there's an easier way that we can do all of this. We can just serve it from our Ubuntu One box on our Nginx box. Let's just look at that path really quick again on that image and see where that's actually at. So we're just going to open an image in new tab. And we can see we got this WP contents uploads and the 2017-3 test.jpg file that we saw before. And since we're syncing it to Ubuntu One, again, we can just go into our Nginx configuration, change that path, and it will serve it directly from the actual local file system of the NFS drive. So what we can do is, again, Ubuntu One, and then we will go over to etc Nginx, sites enabled, proxy, and then what we'll do is we'll say location, WP content, and then uploads, and then we'll just say, I think it's root is our directive, and then we'll say var WP content. I think that's all we'll have to do for that. I don't know what that means. It might mean it didn't work. Okay, I think we're going to be fine here. I'm going to navigate to this again. Okay, and it's 404 not found right now. So we're getting there, but I think, like I said before, we're going to have a few path issues when it comes to this stuff. I think what's going to happen is it's going to take actually the entire path right here and try and find that file. So what I'm going to do, instead of setting things like this, I'm going to go actually, let's look at the logs really quick here and see what's going on. So let's var log nginx error log. It should tell us something in there. Yeah, so here's exactly what I was saying. So it's going to look in var WP content. I set that as the root, but it's actually going to take the entire URI and look all the way down there. And there's a way that we could work around that to get it so the root was actually working right. But what I think I'm going to do is just set the root as var, and then the file path should line up with how it's supposed to be. I think that should be pretty straightforward. So I'll just say var and now when I navigate to it, still broken, of course. Let's look at the log one more time, see what it's trying to serve. Yeah, we're getting closer there, I think. Okay, that's going to be annoying. So it's putting my files directly into the root of this. I'm just going to move things around. So basically, I'm going to make a directory, uploads, uploads. I'm going to move 2017 into uploads. Then I have to go here and change all my things around again. So I'm going to umount uploads, mount that again. And then I think we should be good to go. There we go. We got our test being served there. If we look at our access log, I think we should see, we don't see that it's specifically served from our local hosts, from Ubuntu 1. I think if we go over and we look at the Apache log, and this is also something we probably should have covered, we haven't really talked about much is the actual logs and looking at those to try and figure things out. Maybe we'll find some time to look at that. I don't know. Var log, Apache 2, access log. And we can see that actually we don't see anything being served from uploads. So I'm at the very end of our log here, and I don't see anything being served from WP content uploads. So I think everything was working well. So just as a review, I want to go through again what we kind of did really quick. So we installed our NFS server on Ubuntu 1. We mounted our NF and configured a share, I guess, and we mounted that share on Ubuntu 2 and Ubuntu 3. When either of those boxes received a request, instead of just keeping the file on the local device, on the local drive, it uploaded that via the NFS share to Ubuntu 1. When we were doing this the first time, that kind of worked because it would sync the files between the two devices. We could have actually just had an NFS share on one of these and then just synced it back and forth, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense because we're just proxying a request to a file. If we upload it just straight to Ubuntu 1 and then serve the file from the local system, it removes a little bit of the overhead from Apache on the back end. So, and then the final thing that we did was we looked at the Nginx configuration to serve the files from the actual share. And again, we had a couple of those path issues that we had to deal with because it took the entire URI when it was looking at the root. So that's pretty much what we have to look at for doing this. If you were doing this for those bonus points, I'd want you to do the FS tab version of it too, where you were mounting the directory actually persistent. So there's a few challenging things that you will run into when you're doing this, and that's kind of why I just left it up to bonus points. And it really doesn't impact the functionality that much. And I was really just hoping to do load balancing, but I think this is also kind of fun. NFS is something you probably will run into in a number of different environments. So yeah, if we have time, we might get into talking later about the NFS authentication stuff. So as you noted in here, there wasn't any real access control on any of the things that we were doing. It was just allowing you to mount a directory and share files arbitrarily. And that's fine if you're inside a local network, in my mind, where there's no clients, there's no real interference with things like this. This is kind of an isolated environment that we're thinking of right now. But if this was, for instance, on a corporate network with a number of users, you definitely want access controls and things like that that would do things for you. So that's all I have for you today. If you have questions about any of the stuff we've been talking about, as usual, hang around and we can talk more. All right, see you later.